And we have heard this a couple of times, right? So SDV is not in a perfect shape. The SOPs are delayed. The OEMs struggle with continuous updates of software. Monetization is not where it was supposed to be. It's all not ideal, right? And also, I think there's no, we cannot hide this. And the SOP delays, they speak a language. And from that, there's a common narrative from that observation, which is there are other players in the market who get it right. And these are the tech players. What the OEMs get wrong, they get right. And look at the numbers. Apple, for example, they generate 85 billion in App Store revenues. And this is more than some of the OEMs do in total revenue. And they need to get something right with that. And therefore, it's a kind of a common theme to say automakers had their chance. It's now time to let Apple fix the terrible car software. This is a kind of a typical narrative that you would hear. But it's not that easy. And we will look into that in more detail. Because how does Apple do that? They, of course, have an own proprietary operating system. They have an own app store. They have a unique customer ID. And they use that very, very ingeniously to monetize. And the OEMs try to copy that, right? They want to make a central compute platform, abstract hardware away, and deploy software as easily as possible in order to achieve a kind of similar setup. But the complication is it all rests upon one assumption, and that assumption is you can abstract hardware away. That's the key assumption behind all the centralization approaches. And what if this assumption is wrong? Because in fact, a car is not an smartphone. It has 5+ domains, very complicated domains with very unique requirements. It has multiple parallel OSs running in the same instance. Some cars have more than 30 OSs running in parallel today. There are, of course, all these complicated AUTOSAR specs. You have real-time requirements. It's all, of course, safety critical. In order to fulfill that, it needs to be deterministic. There need to be redundancy built into that. You also have some very difficult but seemingly trivial things like boot up times, suspend to RAM, and all that needs to be covered. And therefore, we think it's not a coincidence, actually, that the biggest SOP delay of all is Apple. Their SOP is delayed by a decade already, right? 2014, we had the first announcements, rumors, Apple is building a car. And they tried, but never came up with something. And this is for a reason, right? And the reason is it is not that easy. Also for the tech players, it's not that easy. And we had this discussion before. Will the tech players come from kind of above and then take over the hardware business of the OEMs, or will the OEMs be successful in going to the software and cloud business? And I only want to say that the tech players still struggle to build successful, except Apple, of course, build successful smartphone devices. Most of them really struggle, because also that seems to be not that easy to be in the hardware business. But this narrative that the tech players get it right and the OEMs have it wrong, this myth led many people kind of go into the wrong direction. And there was a lot of effort, money, time, a lot of effort spent into perfecting different central architectures. A lot of variation, 7 domains into 3 controllers, 5 domains, 2 HPCs, etc. A lot of questioning around physical things, wiring, harness, etc. A lot of constraints that you have. And there's a lot of time and money flown into that. And with that, in our view, the OEMs missed the point. Because the point for a car manufacturer is not centralization, it's not abstracting hardware away, it is reuse, maximum reuse of the software. Because currently OEMs build this window lifter for every new model. Every new model, new window lifter is developed, because all the hardware is exchanged, everything is built up new. And this is, in our view, the key problem of the current SDV programs. And this needs to be some kind of there needs to be a mindset shift away from centralization and towards reuse. And how did they get it wrong, the OEMs, so far? They compared apple with oranges, right? So a smartphone lives by its user base. They have 8 billion devices in the field. It's more devices than people on Earth. Cars, on their smart cars, are a couple of millions, right, in the world. The smartphones have a very simple OS, 12 million lines of code, while cars have some 200 million lines of code, very complex, like we said. They also don't have a developer ecosystem. Apple has 1.8 million apps. The OEMs have almost no third-party developer ecosystem. Even Apple CarPlay has 43 apps in CarPlay. And also the monetization is by cent amounts. The average price of an app is 79 cents, while the applications that you will update and monetize in a car, like FSD, for example, as Tesla does, will be 15,000, something like that, in that range. And the most important difference is a smartphone generates some 7 megabytes per hour as data, a car 25 gigabytes, and a fully automated car would have something like 4 terabytes a driving hour. So completely different amounts of data are flowing. And this is why we believe that control and monetization is not about the operating system. You don't need an operating system. You cannot abstract hardware away. There will be not a smartphone-like operating system in a car. The key into the car is the network. It's not the operating system, it's the network. And this is the only, if you think through it, it's the only really relevant control point. There's a lot of discussion about what's the right control point. I want to maintain the customer relationship. I want to keep the data. I want to monetize. And the only really relevant control point is the network, because all the data, all this terabyte of data is flown through the network. And this is why we would advise optimize the architecture for the network. And build your house from the top floor, not from the bottom floor, not from the top floor, and kind of build it incrementally. Also, if you deploy new software and you develop and deploy new software to your architecture, always make sure that the network doesn't create any bottlenecks. That's the key of a kind of network optimized architecture. And the second, really, we feel is a fallacy, is to try to abstract away as much as possible. On contrary, you need to marry early, right? Not abstract away, marry hardware and software as early as possible. Develop and validate operating system, network, and hardware layers together. See it as one. And evolve around this network with maximum reusability. That's really the key. Not centralizing, maximum reusability. And for this network, this marriage, the network is the key, and also the network is some kind of a means of abstraction in itself, right? Also the network abstracts away, and you can combine different pieces of hardware and software to it. And therefore, a little bit over-exaggerated, but we would say, what do the OEMs need to do? They need to do the opposite of what Apple does. They don't need to try to become a smartphone provider on wheels. What they need to do is they need to monetize their assets and their strength, and this is the data that they generate in the driving process. And that means, practically, don't abstract on OS level, but on network level. Focus everything on reusing software, existing software. This is the key. This will bring down costs. This will drive efficiency. It will make you faster, obviously faster. It will also help you scale more across the different car lines, maybe even brands, whatever OEM that is. And monetize on complex functions, very complex functions that run on different, on a decentral compute architecture maybe. And not some generic apps that you download for cent value. That's not the way for OEMs, but to really monetize this complex data. And also develop ways to capture this data which is generated. Currently, most of the data which the network generates is not captured because it's too expensive, and also you don't really know what to do with all this data. And this is kind of the conundrum that the OEMs need to crack, and the network is the key for that. And therefore, we would say make sure that all the architecture and the compute are designed for complex and distributed updates in the car, like we heard before with the indicator. These are very complex distributed things, but they, in some point in time, they will provide the monetization. And the OEMs, they have the key. They have the network. No tech player, Like they can ask for access to the network, but they will not control the network as long as they don't produce cars themselves. And as we've seen in the Apple example, this is what they're struggling with, and what, in my view, they will always struggle with. And they will also not go there. It's too complex, too less scalable, too specific data. This is not the game which the tech players are used in. This is the domain of the car manufacturers. And this is why I personally feel that the car manufacturers don't need to fear the competition too much. They can partner. They have with the network, they have the central control point in their hand, so they can actively engage, take the best out of them, like we heard from Mercedes. Right? Take Google in, use the places, the POIs, all that. Don't be afraid. Leverage their capability. And yeah, so this is kind of what we have experienced in we have more than 500 production projects running, and this is kind of the condensed experience out of that. Of course, we don't only point out problems, we also want to provide solutions. And we have, I don't know whether it's known, but we have made our most recent acquisition is Technica Engineering, and they provide EE architecture design, especially for that. They work with the leading OEMs around the world all around communication technology. And they also get called in if an SOP slips or something, then they're called. And they really know from all this data which they're generating, they do channel a lot of these communications on the network, measure the network communication and all that. And by doing so, they have a very data-driven insight on what's going on in the first place, and then, of course, essentially also what's going wrong. And this is what they have kind of baked into their products, also hardware products. And yeah, very interesting stuff. And we as KPIT, as I said, we are focusing only on the automotive industry. We're an independent software integrator doing nothing else than OEM software. We want to know software better than any OEM, and we also want to know the OEM world better than any software player. This is kind of our positioning. And we work with 6 SDV programs currently, here we say 12,000, already 14,000 specialists only in automotive software, and partner ecosystem. And looking forward to the discussions and also all the interesting work which is upcoming, because we've seen the SOPs are delayed, so there is work to do, and let's get on with it.
Thank you, Gabriel. Quick question. I think you also announced a partnership with ZF, right?
Yes.
What
correct.
are you doing? Can you
we develop a middleware for this is a product, a license-based product, and this is why we also did this partnership, because we are not in the license business as KPIT, we're an integrator. Yeah. But with Corix, we have now a joint venture in order to really provide an own stack, classic AUTOSAR, adaptive AUTOSAR, but also something beyond AUTOSAR. And this is what we're doing there, and we do the integration, Corix does the license business.
Very good. Yeah, probably you can give us an update next time.
Yes, we'll do. Thank you.
Thank you.